I'm a little bit tired. I was gonna say, okay, yours is even worse, because he went another stop.
Do you need to know the whole name?
How was Detroit?
It was actually Ann Arbor. It was funny because I was telling you when I sat next to Chris Brunner, the head of OTAC, we were supposed to be at our
You can't sit at the table.
The first thing he said when he sat down next to me was, "Thank you for the petition."
So you could sweep him on a little bit,
I
yeah?
said, "Oh, great. You want to discuss it?"
Yeah.
But we didn't really have the time to talk about other things.
Was that a conference? Yeah.
It was the Mobile Source Technical Review Subcommittee, where there's a lot of different industry stakeholders review things that are supported at the interactive advisory group. So it's actually appointed position, they have to be federal registered, so I can look at the process.
And we all know what a FACA is now. Federal Advisory Committee.
Right, we learned some new acronyms.
That's what we need, more acronyms.
Yes, right. I've gotten so I can figure out what they are without knowing it all. Because, I mean, there's some that are the same, like CTA. What do you think that is?
California Trucking Association.
Yeah.
What does CTA mean to you?
The other thing it is California Transit Association.
California Teachers Association.
That's what
I'm thinking Margot.
Yes, it does, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, the supervisor looks nice and casual today.
It's hot out.
He had a breakfast meeting at 8, so he was
Oh,
rolling.
I think he just hung up.
Instead of off mute.
I think he tried to turn off mute and turned it off
Turned off the whole
altogether. So,
I think I woke up at 6 and I felt like, oh, I gotta sleep in.
yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it feels like
But we wake up 6 because that would have been
9.
9.
I was gonna say, when did you return back?
I got home about 12:30 last night.
I got home about 11. And the plane landed at 9, but I figure it'll be an hour and a half before I can get home. And I actually took me an hour and a half to get to the parking garage.
no.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, actually what happened was John and Uber ended driving me over at my parking garage. Oh, wow.
Well, we were circling over Orange County.
Yeah.
They said there's a accident on the runway, so we've got an extension, so that's why we could come in after 11.
Yeah.
And we're all thinking, so what does that mean? Did a plane crash on the runway? What do we do? What's going on?
That's scary, yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't figure it out when we landed.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello,
Hello.
Good morning, John.
have we got a quorum? We're ready to roll?
We have a quorum.
You're ready.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I hope you got a good night's sleep. Welcome back to those of us who had the privilege to represent the people of this district in DC the next few days. So I'll be back and pleased to open the Technology Committee meeting for June 17th. And the secretary has the roll, and we have a quorum, right?
We do.
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, why don't we move right into the items? We have a rather lengthy agenda today for our committee, so let's go to Jason Lowe, I believe is going to present on the revenue and appropriate funds for enhanced particulate monitoring.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Benoit and members of the committee. It's my pleasure to present this agenda item for recognizing the revenue and appropriate funds for the federal monitoring and AQ-SPEC programs, and also to issue purchase orders for equipment and vehicles. Just some quick background with regards to this item. The Air Quality AQ Monitoring Network consists of 43 air monitoring stations that supports many federal programs, which include monitoring for criteria pollutants, air toxics, PM speciation, and near road components. So as part of this action, which is a regular action that occurs every year, is to recognize monies from these different programs and appropriate them into the federal year 2016-2017 budget. And the total amount is roughly a little bit more than $1.6 million. The recommended purchases through solicitations include money for upgrading one of our air monitoring stations. It's our design value station in Crestline, and then also some laboratory equipment totaling $222,000. Also, we are looking to purchase items through either prior bid, sole source purchases, or last known good price that the manufacturers are willing to commit to for equipment and also vehicles totaling to not to exceed $228,000. So the recommended actions for this item is to recognize the revenue and appropriate the funds in the amount of $1,688,054, and upon receipt, appropriate them to the next year's ORC 47 budget, and then also issue the solicitations in order to procure some of that equipment and also services for the air monitoring station upgrade. And then based upon the bids and also based upon the last known prices and sole source recommendations, issue the purchase orders not to exceed the $222,000, and also the sole source purchases not to exceed $228,000. Do you have any questions regarding this item?
Chairman,
Okay, yes, but go ahead.
one of the things on the, in the package is upgrading the Crestline station.
Yes.
And I understand that the station has been a bit problematic. The readings on it, there may not be that accurate, but it's an upgrade. To explain, is it?
Sure.
You don't do a new station, you do an upgrade instead? I
Right.
don't know the
So
particulars.
it's more the station has been around for a very long time, and the station conditions have been fairly poor in terms of the infrastructure. The infrastructure for the building itself, it's an older structure, and it has basically worn out. And given the extreme weather conditions that we see in the area, it's subject to warm temperatures during the summer and then snow conditions during the winter.
It's the enclosure.
So it's the enclosure itself, plus also the infrastructure to develop like cement padding and to be able to support a newer structure.
It's
So
the
it's
housing.
mostly-
It's the housing, not the instrumentation.
Oh,
Yes.
the instrumentation.
The instrumentation
all
is
right.
producing accurate data and meeting the criteria. So, yeah, as far as, we're just developing the infrastructure that houses all the instrumentation, because that infrastructure is becoming worn out, and there's some concerns about its integrity.
So have we been satisfied with the readings at that station? Do we think that they're, I guess we don't think they're quite right, because that's why we're doing the housing, but
No, the housing change was because, as Jason was mentioning, it's old and somewhat dilapidated. We were getting community complaints that it didn't match the rest of the area, which is pristine lake area. So we are doing a full, I mean, it looks nice now. It looks like a little house, to be honest, with a roof and, window and whatnot. The issue with the data integrity is more of what EMA brought up in terms of the monitoring and whether that should be the design value for some of the AQMP, and that's a discussion that they're having with our modeling staff. So, and we can talk about that more in detail where we don't agree with their position, because they're essentially extrapolating from data without taking into account all the economic downturn and the reduced VMT, where we're having to incorporate that as we forecast our model. So there's some differences where we don't quite agree with how they're portraying that. So
Just to add to what Matt has said, we audit those facilities, those monitoring stations routinely, and we calibrate them routinely. So there are no red flags as far as we are concerned associated with the quality of the data that we have been receiving.
okay,
So, and we can say this authoritatively and very confidently, actually.
all right, okay.
And
Okay.
Ms. Mitchell, can I add a comment on that? Because I know you're referring back to some of the discussions we heard in DC and the industry questioning that particular monitor. I have also questioned that on a number of occasions with Mr. Wallerstein in the past. And I don't believe there's a problem with the equipment measuring what's seen at that site. And obviously from the item here today is replacing the housing. It has nothing to do with the technical equipment. We keep that up, but apparently haven't painted the house recently. But the question is it in a particular location based on inversions that occur to get higher readings than you would get above or below that inversion layer? That's, in my mind, the biggest outstanding question. And I would like to explore that as a separate issue with Matt and you and anybody else be interested further, because I've had that question in my mind for a long time, and the industry is clearly asking questions about it. I'm not sure if that's specifically their concern, but I didn't want to prolong the meeting in DC on that issue, but I would like to set up a conference maybe with those guys to hear what their thoughts are. You and I, Matt, and Wayne, if you want, at some point in the near future, so we can kind of delve into what are they saying when they're questioning that particular reading, and is it any way at all related to my questions, and is there something there that we could pursue? Because if that is 5 or 10 points off the mark because of its specific location, but that's not a good indication of what the district is. We are being forced to get to a level of compliance that has huge impacts, and maybe erroneously. So I'd like to explore that further at an appropriate time in the not too distant future.
We will definitely schedule a time where we can review those issues. I mean, whether we're having
Okay.
faults high, faults high,
Thank you.
faults low, we'll address it.
Okay. Any other colleagues would like any other comments on this item, or is there a motion?
I will move the staff
Move the item.
recommendation. And Joe,
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I think Councilman
Who's gonna-
Bustamante seconded, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can we have a
fine.
roll call, please?
Councilmember Buscaino,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit.
Aye.
Motion passes 4 ayes.
Excellent. Okay, let's move to item number 2. And I'm sorry, I'm not on the page. Who's presenting on that?
Thank you, bye.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have I have to recuse myself on this item because of a campaign contribution from BNSF and Ruben Garcia within the last 12 months.
Okay, your recusal is so noted. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead with the presentation, Ms. White.
Okay, good afternoon. With this item, staff is recommending approval of locomotive, ships at berth, and cargo handling equipment projects for the Prop 1B program, as well as an amendment of an award for the SOON program. Back in September, CARB issued new funding awards to the local agencies for the Prop 1B program, and these included $137.9 million for the LA Inland Empire Trade Corridor, which comes to the South Coast HMD for administration and implementation. Of these funds, about $100 million was allocated for trucks, while the remaining $37 million was allocated for locomotive, ships at berth, and cargo handling equipment projects. It's these 2 categories highlighted in blue that are the subject of this board item. Back in February, the board approved release of 2 solicitations, one for the locomotive projects and the other for the ships at berth and cargo handling equipment projects. These 2 PAs closed on March 31st. We've completed the evaluations and we're working with ARB on the compliance check approvals that are required prior to executing the contracts. I'd like to point out that this slide was revised recently due to new information from ARB that one cargo handling equipment project was deemed to be non-compliant with the state's cargo handling equipment regulation, and therefore it's not eligible for the Prop 1B program funding. So it has been removed from this board item. In the locomotive category, staff is recommending execution of a contract with BNSF for the replacement of 10 line haul locomotives with Tier 4 engines, a contract with the Metropolitan Stevedore Company for the replacement of 1 medium horsepower locomotive with a Tier 4 engine for a total program funding of about $20.29 million. And in the ships at berth cargo handling equipment categories, we recommend execution of a contract with ITS for the replacement of 68 yard trucks, 3 forklifts with zero emission equipment, plus funding for the charging infrastructure that's needed to support these equipment. Another contract with TTI for the replacement of 3 yard trucks with zero emission equipment, plus the funding for the charging infrastructure. and a contract with the AEG for the installation of 2 barge-mounted ship emission capture and control systems that will be used to reduce emissions from ships that are calling to both ports of LA and Long Beach. And finally, we're recommending amendment of an award that was originally approved under the Carl Moyer program with DA McCosker. This fleet is a large fleet and was determined to be eligible for funding through the SOOM program. So we would like to amend this award to transfer the project from the General Moyer program to the SOOM program with no change in the project or funding amount.
Is there a reason for that? Why would one program be more important than the other program? More money in one? Or
It's
what?
depending on the size of the number of the equipment that a facility owns. So large size, companies, they qualify according to the off-road regulation. They should be evaluated under the SOOM project or SOOM provision, and the small companies under the Carl Moyer program. We had about 16 or 17 awards, and this action item was inadvertently placed under the Carl Moyer rather than the SOOM. But as far as source of funding and funding amount and the actual project, nothing changed. Everything is the same.
Okay, thank you.
What constitutes the difference? So, like, where does it become a large versus a medium or a small?
It depends on the total horsepower of the off-road equipment that the company owns, and the number of the units they have.
If I may, Fred, just add, Fred, the off-road regulation, a definition of large horsepower fleet is 20,000 and above.
Okay.
Combined
20,000 combined horsepower. Okay, great, thank you.
In summary, we are recommending 3 action items. The first being executing contracts for the locomotive replacement projects. Again, this will be subject to CARB approval of the compliance check for the Prop 1B program. And second, we would like to execute board approval to execute contracts with ships at berth and cargo handling equipment projects, subject to CARB approval for the Prop 1B program. And finally, approve the transfer of that off-road equipment project with McCosker Construction from the General Moyer program to the SOOM provision, with no changes in the project or funding amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Yes. Was there a question, Ms. Mitchell?
No, I don't have any more questions.
Oh.
Yes,
All
you
right,
just
I have one
assumed
question.
Are these
No,
full
I heard you
maps?
say something and I couldn't, it's the technology, sorry. On the replace line haul locomotives with Tier 4 or cleaner engines, 10 at 19.2. I don't know what that is. Is that a share of the total cost? I mean, what are one of those engines cost? I guess is a question.
Yes, that's our share of the contribution per locomotive, and it's anticipated Proposition 1B. The way the funding amount is basically allocated is specific dollar amount depending on the anticipated completion of the project. These projects are anticipated to be completed during 2017, so about $1.9 million per project is allocated. Usually the cost of the units are much more than that. It's around $3.5 to $4 million per locomotive. So we are providing less than half.
$3.5 to $4 million per locomotive, because we were talking about that in DC too. After after Wayne gets the EPA to regulate trucks, the next thing we're going to go back is locomotives, and they're 10 million or 4 million a piece. That's going to be a bigger lift.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, colleagues?
No, not here.
All right. Any motion from somebody?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and please call the roll.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit.
Aye.
Motion passes 3 ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we will go to item number 3, and I understand, Henry, you're going to be presenting that?
Yes, good afternoon, Supervisor and members of the committee. This item is to recognize revenue and from participating members of the California Natural Gas Vehicle Partnership, and also to approve the operating budget for the partnership over the next 2 years. By way of background,
Pardon me, Henry. We have a long agenda. I've had a chance to review this. I imagine my colleagues has. It seems relatively non-controversial. Would anybody object to waiving presentation on this item?
No objection, move the approval of the item.
I'll second.
I do actually have a couple questions.
Thank you.
Um,
Okay, then go ahead and answer your questions.
So my questions are just more with respect to expenses versus revenue that's generated. It seems like we're spending more every year than actual dues are being paid. That
no,
accurate?
we actually have more dues collected than expenditures, and maybe it's the way the table is laid out.
Yeah.
And so over the last couple of years, we have expended $50,000 to do this project called the Game Changer White Paper. And we had expended $26,000 for sponsorship of conferences. But we have a total about $385,000 remaining.
Correct. In the total account, I'm just talking on an annualized basis. So the dues are $130,000 the way I was looking at it on page 4 of the report. And maybe this is 2 years. Is that why?
Yes.
Okay, 2 years. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think we have a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Councilmember Buscaino,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes?
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit.
Aye.
Motion passes 4
Thank you,
ayes.
colleagues. And that'll bring us to item number 4, Richard Carlson.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and Mr. Mitchell. I'm presenting on a request to issue a request for technical information and some cost information to develop and integrate ultra-low emission diesel engines into trucks. As you may recall, we've done a program here on natural gas engines. The technology is not the same between a gas engine and the control approach you use for that versus diesel engines. So we would like to push the capability of the diesel engine down to the 0.02 level that we have with the natural gas engines. Diesel trucks are expected to remain a large part of the current fleet into the future. That has to do with fuel availability and the nature of goods movement really through the country as a whole. Cleaner trucks are needed to meet the ozone standards. Improved technology is needed because the current engines are not particularly close to where we would like to be with this ultra-low standard. We would also like these technologies to be compatible with renewable fuels, which are entering the fuel supply market. So this request for information is specifically related to diesel engines for heavy-duty vehicles intended to be Class 8 trucks, essentially. These would include information on advanced engine designs and emission controls that would enable the engines to achieve 90% cleaner emissions. We want information on the proposed technology, the development approach, estimated costs, and a commercialization plan and schedule to get these into the market. The proposed schedule for this is to release the RFI in July upon board approval. It'll close in September. We'll have a few months to assess the state of technology as it's reported in these responses to the RFI. Evaluate the funding needs. We need then, based on the funding budgetary requirement from the bidders or the respondents, to obtain funding. We anticipate this to be somewhere above maybe $5 million per applicant, and obviously that doesn't come directly out of district funds. So we would be looking for support from other agencies that would participate in this development activity. And once we have funding in place, we have an understanding of the scope that appears to require development support, then we'd issue an RFP to proceed with the development. So our recommended action is to issue this request for information and to be able to proceed with this advanced planning on the development activity. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions?
Chairman, I have a couple of questions.
Ms. Mitchell, please.
One of the things you mentioned is the technology needs to be compatible with renewable liquid fuels.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, the diesel fuel is, essentially the bulk of the production that's available, but there are upcoming what they call gas to liquid processes that are taking renewable natural gas, I shouldn't say natural gas, renewable gas supplies and converting them to liquid fuels. Liquid fuels are more readily distributable and available for use by the fleets.
I can add to that. So in particular, we have a pre-proposal from a large engine manufacturer that believes they can get to below or 0.05 or lower using dimethyl ether. So we wanted to make the RFI broad enough such that you could have renewable diesel or other alternative fuel such as DME to get down to that 0.05 or lower emissions. So we're trying to cast a wide net so we can include not only the EMA or the MECA folks rather, who talk to us about this and they see this as a great opportunity to actually demonstrate the technology that they presented to us, but also engage a large engine manufacturer with a push for this alternative fuel, DME. DME has properties that are very similar to propane, so the infrastructure could be very readily available. It's just whether the fuel availability is there.
I see. Now, would this demonstration lead to certification of these
So what
types of
Mr.
things?
Nastri was telling me is that you better say something about our petition, because this is exactly how it fits in with how we're proposing to show the EPA that not only do we have a natural gas engine available, we have a pathway to get renewable diesel or other alternative fuels on that 0.05 or 0.02 track. So this definitely helps with our petition.
I know it helps with the petition, but.
And the goal is to certify it.
The goal would be to certify it.
And I would add that back in the early 2000s, we did the same thing with the 0.2 gram standard. So before there were any 2010 available engines, we worked to get the natural gas certified, which we did ahead of schedule. And then the diesel technology came along. So by setting that standard, that bar, it forces the market to also then comply. So we expect now that we have a 0.02 8.9 liter engine, we're going to see diesel engines.
Diesel.
Well, we know that some are certified to 0.1 already or lower, so they're able to ratchet down.
Okay, good. Yes, exactly. This is what we need to do to get to 0.02 diesel. So.
Other questions?
No,
Let me ask one. The slide shows the 90% cleaner than the 0.2, which is 0.02, and what we were discussing in DC. But then I heard 0.5 a couple different times. What's the difference there?
I'm sorry, Supervisor. The petition actually allows a phased-in approach which matches the optional low NOx standards, so they can go to 0.1, 0.05, 0.02. So they could have different levels, although there will be different phase-in levels where they have to meet that lower standard. So allowing liquid fuels to meet maybe not right off the bat 0.02, we're allowing them to kind of phase into 0.05 and then 0.02.
Okay. So, any other questions? All right, I'll accept a motion.
I'll move the recommendation.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, a second, please call the roll.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit.
Aye,
Motion passes 4 ayes.
thank you. We have now to move to agenda item number 5, heavy-duty natural gas trucks and amending a contract, and Mr. Ashinuga.
Yes.
Is that right? How do you
That's
pronounce
right.
it? Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman Benoit and members of the committee. My name again is Adiwale Ashinuga, The item before you is to amend contract under Prop 1B Goods Movement Program. In 2015, the board recognized $1,160,056 award from the United States EPA to be used for diesel truck and school bus replacement projects. The board also committed a total of $175,000 of the award to be used for 7 school bus replacement projects. In anticipation of the release of the 0.02 gram CNG engine, staff requested then and obtained approval from EPA to use the remaining $985,056 to replace old school trucks, old diesel trucks with 0.02 gram CNG trucks, and as well as cover the administrative costs to implement the projects. In May of 2016, the board awarded a contract to CAC Portland to replace 150 diesel trucks with diesel powered by 0.02 grams NOx CNG engines under Prop 1B program. Now, because the engine is new, of course, the order is still quite low. As a result of that, the staff believes that additional funds are needed to further reduce the incremental cost for buying new ultra-low emission trucks in lieu of those old diesel trucks. So the proposed project is to amend the contract with CAC Portland Company to increase funding for 80 of the 150 trucks by $11,625 per truck for a total increase of $930,000. Of course, the 80 trucks that we are talking about here were selected because they, of course, met the model year requirement under the DURA program. In addition, staff is now proposing also to reimburse general fund up to $55,056 for administrative costs. Finally, staff recommended actions are as follows. 1, to amend contract with CAC Portland Company in an amount not to exceed $930,000 using DURA funds in Fund 17. And finally, to reimburse the general fund account for administrative costs up to $55,056 from Fund 17. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, questions?
I have
Let
one,
me,
Mr. Chairman.
go ahead. Dwayne, you have one?
Yeah.
Dwight?
In item 4, we just talked about casting a wide net, and I don't know if this one could have been cast wider, but it seems like basically all the funds can pretty much go to the school bus project and then one company, which is of a concern. So I was just wondering if you could elaborate on how that all originated.
Well, the program, initially we applied to EPA under the DURA program to fund or replace heavy-duty trucks with cleaner trucks as well as school buses. So we're limited to that universe. In addition to that, EPA has a requirement on the type of vintage that we can select from, meaning the model year of those vehicles. So again, that is the second constraint. So what we did back then was we said we're going to be replacing the old diesel trucks with the 0.2 grams because we weren't sure that the 0.02 trucks were going to be available. Knowing that they're going to be available, we went back to EPA, still working with those two constraints to present an argument that now let's go ahead and use those funds to do a 0.02 grams rather than 0.2 grams. So those two constraints are really what we're working under. So that's why we only focus on the trucks as well as the school buses.
Okay. And so the one company here that is going to get the bulk of the funds, you said that the orders were kind of slow to start with, and
Right.
they received the Prop 1B grant first, but the orders were slow, so we're trying to help provide some additional funding to make sure that the purchase occurs. So we'll get to 80. Do we expect them to come back on the remaining 70 and want some more funds?
What I didn't say that I need to say is that we have actually a lot more fleets that were recommended for funding under Prop 1B by.
Sure.
But all of those, the two other constraints, I'm sorry to keep throwing the word constraints, but there's two other constraints. One is the model year that I talked about.
Okay.
That model year, Portland is the only fleet that has those vehicles in that model year.
Okay.
That's one. And then secondly, there's other folks, the leader of the engine that they were asking for the other folks were asking for, as well as Portland, were for 12 liter. So again, we don't have 0.02 12-liter engine yet. What we have 8.9.
Could I try to maybe summarize that? Is the 8.9 liter is commercially available. What we're finding is there are not a lot of truck body manufacturers are actually integrating it into their model year lineup.
Okay.
Cal Portland was one of the first to actually ask for it under Prop 1B. A lot of the other Prop 1B recipients asked for the 12 liter, which isn't available yet.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is ensure that it gets integrated into this truck purchase as one of the first early orders. And there is still an incremental cost. Prop 1B is not covering the entire funding that would take for the 8.9 to be integrated.
Okay.
So we're adding a plus up to ensure that it gets done and that we get these engines on the road. Currently, it's available, but only a handful of school bus fleets and some of these waste haulers are actually taking advantage of it.
Okay. So with the Prop 1B funds in this, I mean, we're basically, what are we subsidizing, $15,000, $20,000 of a truck?
Yes, under Prop 1B for 0.02 gram, we can provide $100,000 per truck per ARB guidelines. So with this addition, it's going to add up maybe another $10,000, $11,000 per truck. It leaves a larger incremental cost, but the Prop 1B specifically allows actually leveraging these funds with DERA and other federal funds. Because of these new technologies that we have, the pricing is higher. So on categories that we can, and there is funding available to leverage, that's what we're trying to do. And again, as Matt said, because this is the first application that the engine is certified and available, and it's going to be on the road earlier than the others. So this is the one we are leveraging with. So during the time between now and 2020 that we have to implement the remaining projects, of course, if we get other DERA funds or other co-funding, that's going to help further leverage the other applications that we have under Prop 1B. We'll try to do that.
Okay. All right, well, that answers a lot of it. If I have any more questions, I'll ask you offline.
Sure.
Chairman, I wonder if I could ask how much.
Yes, please, Ms. Mitchell.
How much does one of these trucks cost?
At this time, the actual price, it's not really set. We can estimate how much it is. For example, when we did the LNG trucks a couple of years ago at 1.2 gram, and then we went to 0.2 gram, we were talking about 180,000 or so. So these at 0.02, we are estimating it's going to be maybe in the range of 250,000, but the actual price is not set because the product is not readily available at this time.
So we're paying 120,000.
Yes, 110, 11,000.
100, okay.
40%.
Actually,
Do we have any, do we have any certainty that they actually will do this conversion? Or is there any way to make sure that they do?
Well, the engine is certified and available, and the funding is there. We have basically through our program announcements, we have applicants that have applied for it. So what air districts and ARB we are hoping for, that the market basically creates all the attractions that is there for the manufacturers to provide something. There is no technology barrier on providing the vehicle. So
Yeah, and in fact, Supervisor,
Is Cal Portland going to do this?
that's what we're trying to do is ensure with the sufficient incentive funding that they will do this.
So
But we don't know for sure.
I guess will we follow up and make
Oh,
sure
absolutely.
that they've done this?
We never award unless they actually place the order.
all these trucks are pre and post inspected, and then we enter into a 5-year contract life.
Right.
So not only we pay when they are delivered, but every year we follow how much mileage they accumulate, and we submit annual reports to ARB.
That would be good to do,
Okay.
because we want to know about
Yes,
performance of these
absolutely.
trucks too. We want to make sure they can do the duty
Sure.
cycle they're supposed to do.
And as you know, for any grant or contract that doesn't move forward, that money just gets put back into the prop funds, the pot or other pot, and then we resolicit for projects that go down the waiting list.
But let me say one more thing, and that is that doing this is exactly what we contemplate for getting a new technology going. That somebody has put some money in to research and develop this, and then they've said, okay, we can make it, now who will buy it? That's the question we heard in some of our meetings. And so now, with incentives, we help create that market of people who buy it. So, I mean, this is the plan we've set out for ourselves to get new technology on the road. So I'm fully in support of this, but I do think follow-up, the kind of follow-up we do, let's make sure that this truck can do the duty cycle it's intended to do and performs the way we want it to perform. And if technology changes are needed, then we're working with the manufacturer to get that done.
Yes.
So the funds are just tied to this 8.9 liter engine, is that, because there's a bunch of people that want to use 12 liters that don't exist at this point, so.
So we have issued program announcement, and actually your board approved already $52 million in projects that came in, and there was a slew of applications. We got applications for zero emission electric trucks at heavy duty class 7 and 8. We got applications for 0.02 at 12 liter, hybrid heavy duty, 0.02 gram at 8.9 liter, and the 0.2 gram natural gas, which is still allowed for large fleets. So we had a whole slew of technologies that came in, and this is the one that is basically currently certified engine available that we are pushing its implementation. The other ones, we're going to get into contract between now and June of 2017 to give them longer time for the technology to be available and integrated, and they will have till June of 2020 to have the vehicles on the road and in operation.
But I think your question is that, so we had this DERA funding available. So what happened is we applied to DERA, said we were going to do electric and then natural gas replacements. They require competitive solicitations. We went out for solicitation. We didn't get sufficient trucks in the model year that they required, and so this is an opportunity to do that. There's also a clock associated with DERA, as Mr. Nashby knows. So this is 2014-15 money. We have this funding available. We need to spend it if we're going to be eligible for future funds of DERA because they look at your past performance. And so this is an opportunity for us to move the money quickly, get 0.02 gram engines on the road. So there's a lot of, we think, positive benefits to being able to do the project.
Okay, that all makes a lot more sense, because from a market adoption perspective, it seems like the market's saying, I don't want the 8.9 liter. So, I don't think this necessarily gets there, but if we need to spend the funds or we lose them and we might not get more in the future, plus we're showing a 0.02 works out there, and performs, then it makes a lot more sense to me. So thank you very much.
The big challenge that we have is the timing. And the reason that I was asking on the timing, because 2014-15, and we're just spending it now, Congress looks at EPA's budget and they look at EPA spending. And if EPA isn't spending the funds, Congress will sweep back those funds. So I want to make sure that we're addressing the funds in a timely manner so that we can continue to demonstrate that there's a need for those funds. Because what Congress will say is, we gave you $100 million, you guys haven't even spent it, and you want $100 million more? Ain't gonna happen. So
And the
that
DERA
aspect
source is really valuable. As you know, we were campaigning for that when we were, in fact, I think they just put more money through the DERA funding, right? That just happened. And hopefully we're going to get some of that.
Yeah, we spent some time thanking Congressman, yeah, we spent a good deal of time thanking Congressman Calvert for his efforts in that area. And not only did he get the $100 million again, but 80% of it has to be spent in non-attainment areas, so it puts us in a good position for more of that in the future. And we thanked him profusely for those efforts. Okay, any other comments, questions?
I think you need a motion.
I'll move the item.
I need a motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Buscaino,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit,
Aye.
motion passes 4 ayes.
Thank you. Let's move then to item number 6, and Navin Berry is going to present on zero emission fuel cell electric transit buses.
Good afternoon, Naveen Berry, and I will be giving 2 presentations. Number 6, this project is really to support demonstration and deployment of fuel cell buses at the Orange County Transit Authority. And just as a way of some background.
Orange County.
Orange County. Oh, okay. So last fall, the Air Resources Board released some calls for projects for zero-emission buses and trucks. And the Center of Transportation and Environment, and we work with them very closely on fuel cell trucks and other types of projects, actually submitted a proposal to the ARB for 20 total fuel cell buses, 10 at Orange County Transit Authority, 10 in Northern California and Oakland and Contra Costa County. The proposal also included developing a brand new hydrogen station at OCTA Santa Ana facility. So that's also part of this project. The ARB granted the full $22.3 million to the Center, or CTE, for this particular project, and we're going to be, I'll give you some more details, but cost sharing that. So the proposal is really to do the full 40-foot transit buses, and those will be developed by New Flyer. New Flyer is a very established, large OEM for transit buses, and OCTA and others locally as well utilize New Flyer's buses very regularly. This particular bus will have a 80 kilowatt hour battery pack, have about 38 kilograms of storage of hydrogen on board, and it'll really meet the 300-mile range that's desired by OCTA. So the bus will be designed specific to their desires and specifications, I should say. The fuel cell itself will be manufactured by Ballard. Ballard has been in the proton exchange membrane fuel cell business for about 20 years. They have numerous such fuel cell stacks in buses already. And we're excited to have that particular team be developing these particular buses. And this fuel cell buses, one of them operating at Sunline actually has been in operation for 20,000 hours and at AC Transit. So some of the earlier success is now being leveraged into some larger volumes. The funding that has been requested of us is a very small 2%, but it does translate to about $1 million total. As indicated, ARB is cost sharing most of this particular cost, but OCTA and AC Transit in Northern California, as well as Bay Area, AQMD Northern California is cost sharing the buses
Except
that
for
will
the
be demonstrated there.
Alameda
Yes.
portion. They're not giving it to us.
No, they're not. And then with that, staff recommends that the committee approve the cost share of $1 million towards the demonstration of those 10 buses at OCTA.
Questions?
Just a comment. I just want to
Please.
thank you for the presentation. I had a chance to meet with OCTA CEO and the chairwoman probably about 10 days ago. And we were talking specifically about this because I think they just did a ribbon cutting of their first hydrogen bus, and they were very excited about this. I asked them a question that had come up, I think, at our last tech meeting about another company that was getting some new technology that was being tested out there, and I asked them how they felt about testing things, being an early adopter. So there's 35 of these in operation. They want to do another 10, and I asked them, do you feel like a guinea pig in any way or anything like that? They said they were very excited about this actually, and we're looking forward to it. And they were an early adopter. I mentioned to Mr. Nastry about they were an early adopter of some LNG and didn't work out very well for them. But this one, even in spite of they're feeling a little burned on that, they were very excited about this. So, I just want to say thanks.
SAP worked with OCTA And they actually spent the time and the energy to go to Sunline to see how their operation was and how successful their operation has been. They did the same visit to AC Transit that's had fuel cell buses for about a decade now. So they did their homework, and I think they felt much more comfortable that way. And the ribbon cutting was a good first fuel cell 40-foot fuel cell bus that they received, and we're working with them on the fueling aspects.
Yeah.
So Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yes, please.
So one of the things I'm hearing from the transit authorities is that while the upfront cost of these hydrogen and electric buses is high, over time, they come out very well because the maintenance costs are much lower than you have with a gasoline powered vehicle. I don't know how that compares with CNG. Maybe Matt can make a comment on that, because almost, all the metro buses are CNG.
Yeah, it's difficult to say because during, as Councilmember Robinson mentioned, when the first rollout of the early natural gas engines, they did have overheating the cylinders, and so they were actually melting pistons, and I think Naveen's got a melted piston in his office, because he was leading that program at the time. So they went through a learning curve on that. And as we had mentioned before, the technology that's being proposed for the .02 is very similar. It's a new catalyst, it's a bigger catalyst. And so a lot of the issues they experienced when they first changed over to that, they're not going to be experiencing moving forward. So every indication is that maintenance is going to be lower as you move forward with .02. In fact, LA Metro just gave a presentation to a maintenance working group for the transits, showing that over time they have gotten those maintenance costs down. And it's been a success story as far as they're concerned, because they've got thousands of buses. So that being said, we believe the .02 gram will have lower maintenance costs than was previously experienced, even with the bad taste in the mouth from OCTA and Sunline as well. But that being said, when you have an electric bus, the maintenance costs are, it's just like your electric car. There's less moving parts. The maintenance costs are much lower. You're going to have less brake wear and brake maintenance. So we'll have to see on these demonstrations, because we're going to be testing all flavors of these technologies, which ones will win in the end. But we do believe that both of those technologies will give you kind of a win-win.
And if I may add, as a part of the grant from ARB, there's going to be a very detailed data logging and data monitoring aspect to it, and then a report will be generated. They haven't decided which national laboratory will do it, but a report will be generated looking at exactly those parameters to see what may be a better pathway from a technology and economics perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd also add that they're upgrading the hydrogen station again at Sunline. It was one of the very first. It's now one of the very oldest, but they're going to be changing it out. When they're done, they'll be able to point to the fact that it's all created using solar power at that facility, some of which was contributed by AQMD for the solar panels. So you have a real net zero emission vehicle here, and that's pretty exciting.
Yes.
Can I have a motion?
Next thing is for you to do a solar powered hydrogen station, Dwight.
Chairman asked for a motion.
I'll move the item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Buscaino?
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And Ms. Barry, you ready to go for number six?
Yes, sir.
No, I'm sorry, number 7.
7.
Okay.
This is a fairly routine item that staff brings back to the committee and board every year, basically for allocating funds to support some of our incentive programs. We talked about Carl Moyer and Prop 1B earlier, as well as a Clean Fuels Fund, including some acquisitions of the advanced technology showcase vehicles like the plug-ins or electric or fuel cell type vehicles. Typically, this provides some flexibility in implementing some of these programs. Excuse me. Clean Fuels Program is the research, development, demonstration, and deployment program that I presented to you a few months ago. I won't get into too much detail, but In support of that, we have some administrative costs as well as some technical experts and consultants that help us with some outreach and conference planning and so on. Carl Moyer is another program where we provide some incremental costs, and I'm not going to get into details because I think all of you are very familiar with it, but it allows up to, or it allows 5% of the funds for administrative fees. This action will allow us to allocate that back so we can use those, the support services. Prop 1B is very similar in that regard between Carl Moyer and Prop 1B, and then if I add the Clean Fuels Fund, we do close to 1,000 contracts every year, so there's a lot of support and administrative functions that go with that. Again, I mentioned some of these already, but technical assistance, also doing conferences, sponsoring conferences, helping consultants at these, looking at different proposals that come in, and the broad range of public outreach that we do. I will take a minute, however, to talk about some of the advanced technology vehicle purchases and leases. As I indicated, a lot of those are for specialty showcase type vehicles that are used at outreach events for our public affairs by our board members and so on. So that's a very important aspect, and again, the administrative costs that go with some of these functions. And so the recommended action is really to transfer some funds from Clean Fuels Fund program, about $1 million, $75,000 from the Carl Moyer and $300,000 from Prop 1B into the fund, and then also an additional $285,000 for the Clean Fuel Fund program for the vehicle acquisitions and other ancillary solar panel upgrades and repairs. So a real brief presentation there on that, and then the last item is really to also authorize the procurement manager to waive the publication requirements for the vehicle acquisition, because a lot of these are very specific models by specific manufacturers. So with that, if I can answer any questions.
Questions, colleagues?
None here. I'll move the item.
Move approval?
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Buscaino?
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit?
Aye.
Motion passes 4 ayes.
Okay, that brings us then to item number 8, and Mirasola, Ms. Mirasola, you going to present that for us?
Good afternoon. Lisa Mirasola here to present. This is a receive and file report for the California Fuel Cell Partnership Executive Board meeting and the quarterly updates. So just a few highlights from the April meeting, which was held in Southern California. The Executive Board holds public meetings twice a year. And so this meeting was down here in Southern California, and the next Executive Board meeting will be in October in Sacramento. So our representative to the Executive Board is Dr. Parker. This meeting, these were the topics highlighted: bringing retail stations online, reducing equipment and station costs, helping increase the availability of supply and renewables for hydrogen, and timing and funding to get us to 100 stations, which co-funding is available from the CEC to help us do that. And just a couple of the actions. Every year there's a program plan, and we review the progress on that plan. The board approved the publication of a medium and heavy duty action plan, but the report is being polished and reviewed to make sure that everyone, that it dovetails with all the new information that's coming out in this area. So that should be coming out shortly. And the restructuring of the Fuel Cell Partnership had some goals to really enhance the value of the partnership to members, encourage new members to join, and to engage some additional members that we had been active in the past. So a couple have come in this year, and they're working on bringing in more. And also the they set the meeting dates for next year. So again, splitting up April next year in Southern California and October in Sacramento. And just to highlight a few of the activities in our area, the Fuel Cell Partnership has outreach activities all over the state. But late last year and early this year, some of the highlights included the UC Station celebration. Their new fuel cell bus was deployed and fuels at the station there. Also, Toyota Mirai was launched in Los Angeles, the first fuel cell vehicle for sale in California, also for lease. So they're have deployment plans for those, and actually the largest Toyota dealer, Longo, uses our hydrogen station here at Diamond Bar. So as more stations come online, they'll probably have another station closer to their dealership, but we've been seeing a lot of activity from our station from those efforts. And other activities like the Clean Tech Investors Forum took place in the spring in Dana Point this year. Another big event was the Santa Monica Hydrogen Station event in Santa Monica, April 19th. So a lot of smiling, happy faces, and not every station will have a specific event. They're really tailored specifically for the community and the timing of the stations. But we will continue to encourage, those station events when we can. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions, colleagues?
Nope.
Good. Thank you for the presentation and some good news.
Chairman, I have one question. Do we have any in our fleet? The hydrogen, the Mirais or hydrogen
Yes,
cars?
we have two.
Our EXO is driving one.
Yeah.
And then we have another one that's used for events. We have two Mercedes F-Cells. I was just talking to Lisa, because I know Councilman Robinson would like to drive one. We also have a Hyundai.
We have a Hyundai retail version, which is leased, and we also have an older research version, which we're continuing to accumulate miles. So it's got about 38,000 miles on it now.
Is the Hyundai the Tucson?
Yes.
Hyundai Tucson SUV.
So it's a small SUV.
But as the stations become, so staff has been reticent, or hesitant rather, about allowing board members to drive the fuel cell vehicles until the station reliability is better, because it's kind of been up and down. But I think we're at a point now where, I don't know, Wayne could probably comment, because he's using quite a few of the stations now, and I don't know if he's been experiencing any issues, but that's our biggest fear, is that we leave a board member stranded somewhere.
I think thanks for the concern about me.
That's our second biggest fear.
The Lake Forest station is, at least in my opinion, the best that I've used. It's nice access, it's really clean, it's really good. The Long Beach one, it's really tough to get into because you almost have to back into it, and it's crowded, it's by the store entrance. But our station, I think I've only had one issue where I didn't get a full charge, but I had enough. And that's the only time I've ever had an issue, but I've also fueled up near Santa Monica, I think there's one up there. So I haven't had any real issue. The only, if I were to say I have a desire, would be to see more in the Inland Empire and more going out to like Palm Springs, because that was the only time when I couldn't basically go there and back, because I didn't have the fueling infrastructure to recharge.
They didn't let you fuel over at Sunline?
I think they have
Or is
just
that
a
different?
35 bar.
Right,
there.
yeah, right
That's
now
the
it's for
lower-
buses.
That's just for buses?
Yeah, the earlier vehicles could use it, but now the new vehicles all are higher pressure.
It's not really compatible.
And they have other more sophisticated communication protocols and things. So like Toyota doesn't want you to go out there yet until hopefully that station will get upgraded. But we are looking forward to several stations coming online.
Riverside should be open soon, before the end of the year, is my understanding.
Yeah.
And the one was the one on.
I agree with the comments about the Inland Empire and the need for that, because it's never good when the vice chair's, ahead of the other member like me in technology, but he's driven it back to Wildemar and back and come close to running out. But now the Riverside station, last time I heard from him about a week and a half ago, the guy said we're not quite ready to sell it yet, but he had already fueled up once before, and the guy didn't know it. So, but Riverside's getting close, and I think the upgrade at Sunline is coming to allow for this, right?
Yeah, they're considering both heavy duty and light duty. You know, it's kind of different fueling protocols, so we just need to make sure that it's compatible with both. And so in fact, they may approach us for funding of the light duty side.
I thought they had, could somebody check and give me an update of what Sunline's future timeline is?
We'll do that, Supervisor.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? This was a receive and file. Let me ask if, I always ask at the beginning, I should have, maybe I forgot today, if there's anybody there in the public would like to comment on any item as they come along, let me know. I didn't see any. I will now ask for any general public comments.
Nothing here?
I have nothing here, so we have no public comments with that. All right, thank you. How can you say that? You're not, I can't even see you.
Are you under the table?
Thank you, Councilman. All right, very good. Then we'll call the meeting adjourned then. Thank you.
We have some fingerprint analysis.